in Luke chapter 6. In fact, what I wanted to do was get to the Sermon on the Plain, but I'm taking my time getting there. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but you will in a few weeks. In Matthew, it's called the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. Luke has, I think it's a different sermon. That's often debated among people that like to argue. Right? Yeah, that's an understatement, isn't it? A lot of people out there like to argue about stuff, and especially you'll find that people like to argue about the Bible. And I hope it makes sense to you of why I think that it's a different sermon when we get there. Number one, the content of it is just different. And so if the content's different, it must be different. I don't know about you, but a red car and a blue car are not the same, right? So the sermon in Matthew and the sermon in Luke are not the same. I think it's two different sermons. And I think Jesus had more than one sermon. Right? I think Jesus was a good enough preacher, right, to have more than one sermon in his notebook. Right? That's silly, isn't it? To even say stuff like that. It almost makes me sound silly. So we're going to get there, and boy, I tell you what, this is just so rich. Luke chapter 6. Y'all there? No. Luke 6. Luke 6, and we're going to start at verse 6. The Sermon on the Plain, it begins at verse 20. Okay? So I got a few messages here leading up to it. In fact, I think just one more message. I'll probably preach 12 through 19 next time that I preach. I'm taking a little bit of a break from Proverbs. We've been in Proverbs for a long time. If you've gone home and you've sat down, and you've eaten your cheese dip and stuff, and you're like, boy, I tell you what, I really enjoy going to church tonight, but I'm sick of that Proverbs. Would he just get out of Proverbs? That's what y'all do, isn't it? Oh, I know. You don't do that. I know. Man, can we please get out of Proverbs? So I'm going to throw y'all a bone, and y'all can quit complaining about me and talking about me behind my back, and that's no way to be, is it? That is no way to be. If y'all did that, shame on y'all. But I do get it. Just don't take it so far next time. Just lighten up, okay? But we are taking a little break from it, probably like 2 weeks. I don't know if you remember where we were in Proverbs, but we're beginning chapter 25, which is those Proverbs that Hezekiah's scribes found, and they added it to the end of this Solomonic collection that we see, Proverbs 1 through 24. And so you have 25 through 29, and then you've got the words of Agur in 30, and then 31. You know what Proverbs 31 is, right, women? Yeah, virtuous woman. Yeah. I think there's even like Proverbs, I think I've read, seen it somewhere, like Proverbs 31 Ministries, and it's like, you seen that? And it's like devotionals for women and things for women. So Proverbs, that's the rest of the book right there. Hezekiah's collection, then Agur, and then Lemuel, virtuous women. Anyway, we'll get back to it. We almost got to stand. We're in the whole. I know you. I know. Preach the same message over and over, and you would love it. Okay, come on now. Let's don't lie in church. I'm playing. Okay, 6:6. 6, 1 through 5 is what did you know, Stan, do you remember that we looked at 6, 1 through 5 on Sunday night? Yeah. And so I'm going to get up here and I'm going to continue on with that thought. And really these two events, 1 through 5, you got them right there in front of you, so nice and neat, right? 1 through 5 is on one Sabbath, and 6 through 11 is on another Sabbath. It doesn't have to be next week, okay? Luke is just telling you, I think I talked about this a little bit last week or Sunday night, and you probably are like, why is he saying that? Well, let me explain. I said something like, in the Synoptic Gospels, which is what books? Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, right? That's called the Synoptics. John's different. John is what we call in the gospel category because it is about the ministry of Jesus, the life and ministry of Jesus, but the outline and the course that the book of John takes is so much different than Matthew, Mark, and Luke. You'll have almost the same events in all three, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. That's why we call them the Synoptics. But I was talking about placement. You remember me talking about placement? About don't read the Gospels expecting a chronological timeline. It's not a chronological timeline like this happened and this happened. Well, that's why I said that, because this is one of those examples in 1 through 5 and 6 through 11 that Luke puts these two Sabbath controversies next to each other to show you something about the religious climate. Okay? The religious climate of his day, this was the mindset. And that's a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight. It's about the mindset. It is about the attitude. And I love you all, right? I'm so glad I was able to joke around a little bit as we got started and everything, because I probably know more that what you're thinking than you think I know what you're thinking sometimes. But I still love you anyway, even though you do talk about me behind my back. I still love you. But if we're not careful, right, all of us, even me, I am constantly knowing this thing of a mindset. I have a very high self-awareness that I myself can have the wrong mindset about people. Okay? And you can too. And a lot of it is the influences that we have in our life. Okay? Now, what was the mindset of the religious atmosphere here? I'm going to show you something to illustrate this, but this is the emphasis on the Mosaic Law, the emphasis on traditions was just pervasive. And what it did is it just blinded them. It blinded them, and I remember talking about this on Sunday. They could not see who Jesus was. The breakthrough that you will have when you study 1 through 5 and 6 through 11, from our perspective is, wow, I'm learning about who Jesus is, right? That Jesus is he is the Lord of the Sabbath in 1 through 5. He is the highest authority. He has authority over the Sabbath to interpret what it's for and what it means. They thought they had it all figured out, and they're going to ignore who Jesus is. And you'll see in this next passage that they bring that negative mindset about Jesus is there to where they're just blind. Let's read the text, because I want to show you some other things in other parts of the Bible too. Now it happened on another Sabbath. It didn't say next week. It didn't say the following week, like the 28th. It's not what it says. But at a different occasion. That's what Luke means there. Dr. Luke means there. That he entered the synagogue and taught. And a man was there whose right hand was withered. So the scribes and Pharisees watched him closely, whether he would heal on the Sabbath, that they might find an accusation against him. But he knew their thoughts, and said to the man who had the withered hand, Arise and stand here. And he arose and stood. Then Jesus said to them, this is so interesting. He has the man stand up, the man with a withered hand, like this, useless hand, right? Y'all see it? All atrophied and shrunk, shriveled, withered hand, right? Unusable. But he says to them, he has the man, this would be like, Wayne, come up here and, don't do this, okay? But Wayne, come up here and stand with me. And then Jesus starts talking to the people in the synagogue, people in the congregation. And he says to them, he says, I will ask you one thing. Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy? And when he had looked around at them all, he said to the man, Stretch out your hand. And he did so, and his hand was restored as whole as the other. But they were filled with rage and discussed with one another what they might do to Jesus. Wow. Wouldn't that be, Nate, how'd you like to be invited to speak at a church and they all be watching to see if you mess up? Huh. Wouldn't that be something? Wait a minute. We go to church with people like that all the time. There are critics. There are people with a critical spirit all the time who are looking, they're fault finders. That's what they are. Fault-finding, critical people who look like sheep, but inside they are ravening wolves. They are wolves because they're looking for you to mess up. Some people just think they're the watchdogs. They just think that's what their job is. I'm the church watchdog, right? I'm telling you, we can have the wrong mindset about what in the world we're doing here. We're not here to watchdog it. Hey, this ain't no junkyard, right? You go in and pick parts, you pick it and all that. I've done and picked parts before too. Pulled parts out of engines and stuff. A lot of the times those places, those salvage yards, they have a dog, right? They have fences and they have dogs. I'm telling you, if the church of the Lord Jesus Christ is nothing more than a salvage yard with watchdogs, then it's you in the wrong place, and that whole organization is just a sham. That's not who we are. In fact, look at what Jesus does, and before I do, I want to show you a few things about this mindset. This is nothing new. This has been going on for centuries. Go back to Isaiah chapter 1. And I want to show you this real quick. Isaiah chapter 1. It's that big book that I can't find right now. That big book in the Old Testament, it's after Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon, and then I think you come to Isaiah. Is that right? Okay. Sometimes I have to recite the books of the Bible in my mind to try to remember where it is. Look at chapter 1, Isaiah 1, beginning at verse 11. This is to Israel. This is to the people of Judah, right? Isaiah preached this to those people, those old, awful people that just couldn't get right, and God removed them from the land, right? Well, they're really a lot like the Pharisees were too. Isn't it ironic? Do y'all get it? How ironic this is? The Pharisees had set up all of these oral traditions above and beyond the Mosaic law so that they wouldn't sin. Yet their attitudes are the same as the people who didn't have the oral tradition set up. In fact, we'll find that attitude today in some of our New Testament churches, the same thing. Now, if you need an attitude adjustment, if you need to get right, I hope you get right, okay? I don't know. I'm not accusing anyone in here of doing this, but I'm just saying we could all examine ourselves and examine our own hearts and say, you know what, sometimes I have gotten like that. I am like that. I do think like that sometimes. But here's the mindset. Look at verse 11. To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices to me? Well, that's a great question, isn't it? God's asking them, putting it on the spot, why do you even come? Why do you even come and bring your sacrifices to me? Y'all want me to start going back to Proverbs now? What is the purpose of your coming and assembling in one of the Lord's churches? That's a good question, isn't it? Ask yourself, why do you even come? That's what God is asking Israel. Why do you come and worship me? Why do you come and bring these sacrifices to me? And you say, well, why is he asking? Well, read on. Look at what he says. He says, says the Lord, I have had enough of burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fed cattle. I do not delight in the blood of bulls or of the lambs of goats. Listen to this. They're bringing these sacrifices out of obedience. It's not that they're not obedient in their duties. They're doing the duties. The problem is they're not doing the duties for the right reason. They're not doing the duties out of a genuine heart of compassion, and they don't reflect God's character in their worship. They're doing the thing, they're doing the jobs, they're doing the functions, but inside their hearts are not right. Listen to what he says. He says, when you come to appear before me, who has required this from your hand, to trample my courts? Bring no more futile sacrifices. Incense is an abomination to me. The new moons, the Sabbaths, there it is. Wow. The Sabbath. We're going to keep the Sabbath. You know, they're going to do all those things. They're going to keep all those feast days, the Feast of Trumpets, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Passover, all the Pentecost, the Feast of Pentecost. They're going to do all those things, right? But there's some issues. Deep down inside, there's some issues. This is what I was trying to get to on Sunday night, is that if you're thinking that you're going to attend services, and then when you come to the end of your life and you're going to knock on heaven's gate and expect to be let in, because I've been to 14,132 services and expect to get into heaven, that's not going to get you in. That's not going to work. You can keep all the feast days. You can come to church and you can get your Sunday school pins for perfect attendance. That will not get you into heaven. Are you listening? That we don't believe in works for salvation. Amen? We don't believe in works for salvation. We believe in believing in the person who died for us. That's how we enter into heaven. Now listen to this. And that means him coming into your heart and you reflecting that in your life. Listen. He says, I cannot endure iniquity in the sacred meeting. This is God talking. Your new moons and your appointed feasts, my soul hates. They are a trouble to me. I am weary of bearing them. When you spread out your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. Even though you make many prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood. Wash yourselves. Make yourselves clean. Put away the evil of your doing. Cease from before my eyes. Cease to do evil. Look at this. Learn to do good. That's exactly what Jesus says in that passage we just read. He says, is it lawful to do good? Is it lawful to do good or to do evil on the Sabbath? God said 1,000 years before, and it was actually about 600 years. About 600 years before, because Jerusalem fell in 587 BC, 587 years before Jesus, let's say it's 600 years before, he said, learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke the oppressor. I want to show you something else. Fast forward, go past Luke 6 and go to Luke 10. Oh, you love this one. I love it too. Luke 10. Look at verse 25. And behold, are y'all there? Let me pick up my trash off the floor. All my stuff came out of my Bible. One of these is my outline for Sunday that I was scribbling on a piece of paper a while ago. I'm not done with it, don't worry. Just some brainstorming. Look at Luke 10:25. And behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tested him, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? Woo! That's a big question. That's an important question, isn't it? How can I not go to hell? How can I go to heaven? Isn't that the question that we all want to know the answer to, what did Jesus say? He said to him, what is written in the law? Jesus pointed him to the law. I think I had to kind of say something on Sunday night, based upon some comments. Don't trash the law. I know we're Gentiles. I know we're in the New Testament age. We're in the age of grace. We're not under the law. But the law did not come from men. The law came from God. Okay, so don't badmouth it. You just have to know what its purpose is for now, right? Jesus pointed him to the law, and he wasn't being sarcastic when he did it. Now watch what he says about the law, and this is what I want you to get. What is your reading of it? And so he answered and said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Now, I do think that he heard Jesus teach that on a previous occasion, and that's what he was doing, is trying to engage with Jesus based upon what Jesus said. In other words, Jesus says, what does the law say? And the man said, I know where he's going with this, because he's a lawyer. He's very smart. He knows the law. He is like he's like a teacher of the law. And so he says, I know what Jesus is going to do. He's going to say that, so I'm just going to say it before he says it. And he said to him, you have answered rightly. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself. See, he's arguing with Jesus right now. When he says he wanted to justify himself, that means he's defending his position, and his position is different than Jesus. And he said, and who is my neighbor? Oh, boy. We got a problem. We got a problem. And guess what? Me and you have had the same problem. Because what we try to do is we try to nitpick things, and we try to get things in a formula and an equation and say, oh, it's a protocol. If I do step 1 and step 2 and step 3, I'll go to heaven. That's what he's looking for. That's exactly what and that's what hordes of people are looking for out there, is they're looking for a protocol and steps to follow. There are no steps to follow. You're supposed to give your heart to the Lord. That's the step. It's one step. It's called this. You hear the preaching of the gospel, God convicts your heart, you realize you're a sinner, and you respond. Step 1, God reaches out to you. Step 2, you respond. You're either going to be saved or you're not. Ain't no 5 steps, 6 steps. Ain't no class you take. There's no thing that you follow for your whole life. That's not it. It is you responding to the Lord and giving your heart to the Lord. And he doesn't understand that, because he says, who is my neighbor? He wants to define, well, what are the boundaries here, right? Who is my neighbor? Well, you define who neighbor is. And so Jesus gives him a parable, and I'm not going to, you've heard the parable of the Good Samaritan. That's what the parable is there for, is to teach him about who is your neighbor. And I was talking to the secretary at the school the other day. She said, Mr. Baby, everybody knows you. Everybody, so you're so nice. Everybody likes you. Everybody knows you. People come in and they say, hi, hey, Mr. Baby. And she's, they know you too? Yeah, they know me too. I said, you know what I've learned to do? I told her, I said, I've learned to try to be friendly to people. And I told her, I said, I'm not trying to be too churchy here. I said, but I learned that from what Jesus said. Because I said, all these people that I'm working with may not be my friends, but I'm still going to be friendly. You see where I'm going with this? Who is my neighbor? Well, I only have I have 2 on each side, 1 behind. I've got, let's say, 5 neighbors, right? But Jesus is talking about being neighborly. He doesn't have to be geographically positioned right next to you for you to be kind and to love him or her. You are supposed to be neighborly in your heart. Well, that's what their mindset is they're hung up on this, on the letter of the law and legalism. Now, what did we learn from in verses 1 through 5? About the Sabbath. You remember that? What did we learn about that? What was the big takeaway? Y'all remember? Let me prime the pump a little bit. The illustration or response was, why do you work on the Sabbath? Why are your disciples, why is your teacher, why is he teaching you these things? The response from Jesus was, David and his men were hungry, and they come to the tabernacle, and they're starving to death, and David says, give me some bread. And he could have killed the priest. He could, and David was the type of guy who probably would have if it come down to it. But Ahimelech gave him the bread, and they ate. The point that Jesus was making is this, is that in extreme circumstances, God still superintends over his own Sabbath. It's not your Sabbath, it's God's Sabbath, and God has the final say on who has violated the Sabbath. That's the point. And in the case of someone dying, so imagine this, a courtroom scene. Let me illustrate it like this. A courtroom scene. Someone has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that somebody stole something. Okay? I don't know about you, but I want, if I'm ever, and I never will be a judge. I haven't gone to law school. I won't ever be a judge. But in a sense, there is, in your life, in my life, we are going to have to make judgments sometimes. Maybe it's our family or kids or whatever happens. And here's what a judge might say in that case. Guilty. David violated the law. He ate the bread, the showbread from the table of presence. He did. And then the judge would go on to say, however, as I make a decision on sentencing, I have decided in the best interest of life, this is what God would say, in the best interest of life, I am waiving his sentence, and he is free. Is he guilty? He is. He is guilty. You have found him guilty. Well, here we have another case that is come before the court of men. Jesus is standing in the synagogue, and he is aware that there is a man who has a withered hand. By the way, I don't know if you are aware of this, but there's alternate gospels. Have you ever heard about that? The gospel of Peter, the gospel of Mary, there's something called I forgot the name of it, the Nazarene gospel or something like that. They were writings from that time period similar to what we have. And sometimes the stories in there, I don't think they're reliable, but I just thought this was interesting. I ran across this. In the gospel of the Nazarene, blah, 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 this same story is in there. And it said that the man had injured his hand. He was a stonemason, and he had injured his hand working, and it crushed his hand, and he was forever, hurt for the rest of his life. I don't know if that's true, but I thought that was interesting. The hand, any kind of injury like this is another part of their mindset. They looked at things as, if something bad happened to you, you must be under the judgment of God. And I want to tell you, I'm going to be preaching about that on Sunday. And that is not our place to decide. Because you lose your job. Oh, you ain't living right. Have y'all heard that saying? All my life I've heard that garbage. And that, and I know it's halfway joking, right? Sometimes we use it joking. I think sometimes people believe it, though. Sometimes people believe that if bad things happen to you, and not just what other people think, but let me ask you this question. Have you ever thought that about things in your life? Yeah, I have. I've thought that, man, what did I do? Man, why isn't it going my way? I need to find, where's the sin in my life? That's exactly what Job's friends told Job, is that he wasn't, there's some kind of sin in your life. You just don't know about it, Job. You just haven't searched your heart hard enough. You just don't know. You've done something. You've had to have done something for things to turn out this way. You know, there's a great example of what debunks that. I'm giving you a little bit of you're getting a little teaser for Sunday. Do y'all remember what John chapter 9 is about? Anybody? There was a little boy who was blind. He was born blind. He had a congenital blindness. Y'all remember that? John 9? And his parents brought him, and Jesus healed him. But I think the Pharisees asked a question. Teacher, whose fault is it? Him or his parents? And Jesus said it's neither one of them. It's neither one of their faults. And he healed the boy, and that's when the boy said, the Pharisees questioned him afterwards. You remember that? They questioned him, who is this that healed you? Because they were trying to find the perpetrator. Who did this to you? And the boy said, well, I don't know, but all I know is now that I can see now. You read that chapter 9. It's a great chapter. Well, that's an example right there where Jesus said it wasn't anyone's fault. He didn't do anything wrong, neither did his parents. Sometimes things happen in our life. We have accidents. You don't need to blame yourself and put a lot of guilt on yourself. There is examples of chastisement in the Bible, though. There is. But it isn't always like that, okay? Well, they are... probably he is ostracized and thought of in that way. That's my point. But what's interesting is their eyes are really not on the man with the withered hand. Isn't that sad? Yeah. Their eyes are on Jesus for the wrong reason. Ooh, there's a thought for you. You say, my eyes are on Jesus. Well, let me ask you this. Go back to Isaiah chapter 1 and ask yourself that same question. Are your eyes on Jesus for the right reason? Because sometimes I think that people put their eyes on Jesus because they're thinking, if I can just be like Jesus, if I can just live this life and make Jesus happy. Let me get fast forward here to we're going to the Sermon on the Plain in a few weeks. But look at verse 46. But why do you call me Lord, Lord? I want to tell you, someone, and do not do the things which I say. Luke 6:46. He's going to get to that towards the end of that sermon. There are people out there who call Jesus Lord, who claim and profess to know him. But my question to you is this. Do you have your eyes on Jesus for the right reason? They had their eyes on Jesus because they wanted to find him messing up so they could kill him. Did you know that violation of the Sabbath by God's standard, God said, you violate the Sabbath, it's worthy of death. The Pharisees are following the law. But the problem is they're looking at the law with the wrong purpose. They're looking at Jesus for the wrong reasons. They're taking something and they're spiritualizing it and turning it into a religion and turning it into for their own benefit instead of the benefit of others. Jesus says, hey, come here. Come here. And by the way, there's some archaeological, I don't know if you find this interesting or not, I thought it was interesting. They've dug up synagogues from this time period. And they have found that these stone benches in these synagogues were sometimes, I'm not saying they're all like this, you may find another archaeological dig that might reveal something different, but they had along the walls is where people would sit. And the middle of the room was open. Undoubtedly, in my mind, Jesus is standing in the middle of the room with this man. And they are watching him. They are watching him closely. And he says to him, stretch out your hand. Well, I'm sorry. He asked one thing. Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy? We talked about the Sabbath and then he says, stretch out your hand, and he healed him. We talked about that, and I'm going to wrap up. I know I'm way over time. But we talked about that the Sabbath, the purpose of this, number one, Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. Number two, it's one of the oldest things in the Bible. Like it's one of the first things that ever happened, isn't it? It's recorded before the creation of, when we start talking about Eve. It's before all that. It's the first thing. And what it does is it illustrates this. Number one, at least once a week, stop your life and give God some time. You can stop your life. Your life can shut down. You know why? Because God's going to take care of you. You can quit. You don't have to worry about the hay in the field. It will wait. It will be okay. God is going to take care of you. He says, stop, get some rest, and give some time to God. It doesn't mean that you don't do good. When you have an opportunity to do good, do good. Amen? Isn't that 7 days a week? 7 days a week. We should be looking for opportunities. When you got a chance to do something good, do it. And that's what Jesus is teaching here. Is it okay with you if I do something good today? That's kind of what he's saying. I think there is a bit of maybe irony. I wouldn't say Jesus is being sarcastic, but I think there's just a hint of it there when he says, is it lawful? I think as a straightforward, objective, concrete question, you can look at it that way, but I also think it's like this. In your mind, you see what I'm saying? Will the law allow people to do good? That's the challenge. That's the challenge, isn't it? In your mind and how you think about the law and what it's for, will it be okay if God wants to do something good for somebody? I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to wrap up with this. Critical spirit. Let me ask a question. Who's your friend? You know what I'm getting at? Is your friend the devil? Because that's what the devil does. The devil has a critical spirit. The devil hates God. The devil complains. The devil is negative. The devil is a critical spirit. The devil is a fault finder. The devil wants to be God. Now, I don't know whose side you're on, but Jesus wasn't someone that was a fault-finding, critical person. That's not what he was. If you see something that's wrong, I'm going to tell you, Ronnie, can I use you as an example? It's fixing to get real in here. You ready? You ready? Ronnie, I love you, and I want to help you. And you don't even have to come and say, Ronnie, I'm really disappointed in what you've been doing, and I want to help you. No. How about, I want to help you, and I want to get to know you. And as you get to know someone, this is a good approach to helping someone spiritually. You don't have to confront them with their big issue that you have a problem with that you've noticed. Because as you get to know someone, you might learn the reason why they're doing what they're doing, and it might look a little different after you get to know them. You ever heard that phrase, you just never know until you walk in their shoes? You just never know. So here you go. Critical spirit. Try to help somebody instead of tearing them down. We're not watchdogs. And sometimes we're using religion as weapons. Ouch. Yeah. Weaponized religion. Using the Bible. Yeah, it's called a sword, isn't it? Some people would like to cut your head off with it. And I'm telling you, that's not what the purpose of the Bible's for. It's not the purpose of this word here to tear people down and make them feel like junk. The purpose of it is to build them up so that they draw closer to the Lord. I'm going to be quiet. Yeah, this is good stuff, isn't it? Good stuff. I know I covered a lot of different texts there, but you get the point. Let's stop right there. We'll continue on and look at, 12 through 20? we'll look at 12 through 20 in a couple weeks. I'm looking forward to Sunday night. We're going to put Nate on the hot seat. We're going to drill him with every hard question we can find. And we want to see his face turn. See that face? Look, everybody, turn. Look at that face. It's red. He's sweating already. I'm just kidding. We are not going to do that. In fact, I told him on the phone, I said, if anyone tries to do that, I'm going to run up there and I'm going to protect you and I'm going to shield you. Pew, pew, pew. All them, all that. I ain't going to let them do that to you, okay? And they won't. Nate shared with me last week, he said, you weren't lying when you told me this is a loving church. And, he said that to me. And I just want to tell you all how much I love you for being. I told him that you were, and you are, and so I appreciate that. So keep doing that, and we are looking forward to kind of getting to talk to Nate, and I'm looking forward to the cookies and yeah. So start thinking of something you want to ask him, and I'm sure he's just going to tell us some things too. So anyway. All right, let's talk to Juanima earlier today. She's doing better, but I think the days of her being here every Sunday are over. Now, I think you probably already knew that, but I said, Miss Juanima, I just want you to know, don't ever feel guilty, because she's like, I'll be there. I said, you don't know if you're going to be there. You don't know. I said, it's okay. I feel like she's trying to reassure me that she feels bad for not being here and all this stuff. And I said, you're not going to be able to be here every Sunday, and that's okay, because But she did get good results on her MRI. Everything looked good. She just sore. I think she hit her teeth on the table. Have y'all talked to her? Yeah, man, she fell. The chair went out from underneath her, and she goes on the table and neck, and so she had an MRI on her from her neck up, and it was okay, but yeah. So she's doing better. She said she's still a little sore, but it's been rough. Any others?